Vecna doesn't hunt randomly, he doesn't act out of rage, and he doesn't choose children by accident. Every kid he takes is a decision. Vecna isn't looking for victims, he's looking for access. At first, it looks random. Kids disappear, panic spreads, people assume it's violence. It isn't. Vecna watches before he acts. He waits. He doesn't go after confident kids. He chooses the ones already isolated, the ones who replay the same thought, the ones carrying guilt, the ones who don't talk about it. Vecna doesn't create their pain, he uses it. A child's mind isn't sealed yet. There are fewer barriers. Thoughts connect faster. That's how Vecna enters. He doesn't force control, he builds it. He starts with memories, then fear, then dependence. That's why his victims freeze. They recognize the voice. It sounds like their own. This isn't about killing. Each connection increases his reach. Each child extends his influence. That's why he targets them young. Adults resist, children adapt. This is the same reason Hawkins Lab used kids, and why 11 mattered. She wasn't random, she was proof. By the end of this video, you'll see Vecna clearly, not as a monster acting on impulse, but as someone planning ahead. He isn't destroying the world, he's preparing the next one. Stay with me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share before we dive into the video. Vecna was always watching children before the Upside Down, before Hawkins Lab, before 11. Henry Creel was already paying attention to how people worked. Adults blended together. They repeated routines. They followed rules they didn't question anymore. Their choices were predictable. Children weren't. They asked why without worrying about the answer. They tested limits without planning the result. They noticed connections adults dismissed. Henry didn't see that as innocence. He saw it as opportunity. Children hadn't settled into fixed thinking. Their reactions changed quickly. Their beliefs could still be redirected. Henry understood something early. Control is easier before habits form. He watched how children responded to pressure. Some resisted, some adapted. That difference mattered to him. When stress entered their lives, adults hid it. Children absorbed it. Fear stayed closer to the surface. Guilt didn't get buried. Memories replayed without filters. That made children easier to reach. Henry didn't need authority to influence them. He needed access to their thoughts. This mindset followed him everywhere. When he was taken to Hawkins Lab, the focus on children made sense to him. The experiments weren't random. They matched what he already believed. Children weren't chosen because they were weak. They were chosen because they were unfinished. When Henry became Vecna, the target stayed the same. The approach changed. The scale changed. The intent didn't. He wasn't reacting to the world. He was continuing a process he started long before anyone noticed. Children are easier to reach. Vecna doesn't start with force. He starts with access. A child's mind isn't sealed yet. Thoughts move quickly. Emotion and memory overlap. Adults separate those things. Children don't. That difference matters. When fear hits an adult, it gets filtered. They explain it away. They distract themselves. When fear hits a child, it stays active. Memories replay without control. Guilt doesn't fade. Questions don't stop. Vecna uses that. He doesn't push his way in. He waits for a gap. Isolation creates it. Shame widens it. Silence keeps it open. That's why he targets children who feel cut off. Not physically alone, mentally. They're already having conversations in their own heads. Vecna joins those conversations. At first, nothing feels external. The thoughts sound familiar. The images feel personal. That's how control starts. Not with commands, with agreement. Once that connection forms, resistance drops. The child isn't fighting an enemy. They're responding to their own thoughts. Vecna doesn't need to overpower them. He needs them to engage. And children do. Their minds adapt instead of rejecting the experience. They accept the presence before questioning it. That gives Vecna time. Time to learn which memory matters most. Time to see which emotion leads. Time to deepen the link. This is why adults rarely survive long connections. They resist too late. They fight too hard. Children don't fight. They process, and processing keeps the door open. Trauma is the real weapon. Vecna's power doesn't begin with strength, it begins with pressure. Trauma creates that pressure. Children don't compartmentalize pain, they carry it forward. It stays active. A single moment can repeat for years. A single mistake can define identity. Vecna looks for that. He doesn't introduce new memories, he replays existing ones. He finds the moment the child avoids, the thought they push away, the guilt they never resolved. That becomes the entry point. Once the loop starts, it doesn't stop on its own. The mind keeps returning to it. Vecna stays stays there. He doesn't overwhelm, he reinforces. Every replay strengthens the connection. Every emotional spike stabilizes it. This is why his victims appear frozen. They aren't being attacked, they're being held in a memory. Time slows because attention narrows. Vecna uses that state. Fear keeps the mind focused. Guilt keeps it compliant. The child isn't trying to escape, they're trying to understand. That delay matters. The longer Vecna stays connected, the more control he gains. Not over the body, over perception. Reality loses priority. The internal experience takes over. That's when the physical effects begin. By the time the body reacts, the decision is already made. This is why Vecna's method works. He doesn't need to dominate. He needs the mind to stay engaged long enough, and trauma guarantees that. Why Hawkins Lab focused on children. Hawkins Lab didn't choose children by chance. Adults came with limits. Their thinking was fixed. Their responses were predictable. Children were different. They adapted faster. They responded without filtering. They absorbed instruction instead of resisting it. That made them usable. Dr. Brenner understood this early. Power wasn't something you forced. It was something you shaped. Children could be shaped. Isolation was the first step. Remove distractions, control environment, limit outside input. The second step was pressure. Stress revealed ability. Fear accelerated response. Emotion amplified output. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake. It was method. Vecna learned inside this system. He didn't reject it. He refined it. The lab focused on children to expand reach. Vecna focuses on children to extend control. Same logic, different scale. Every test at Hawkins mirrors his process. Separation, emotional stress, mental focus. Vecna applies it without equipment. The lab needed walls. Vecna doesn't. That's why he's more efficient. Hawkins' lab was searching for power. Vecna already understood where it came from, and children were always the answer. 11 was not an accident. 11 wasn't the result of luck. She fit the pattern. Early isolation, constant pressure, limited outside influence. Her emotional range stayed active. Nothing was buried. Nothing was resolved. That mattered. Vecna recognized it immediately. He didn't see her as an opponent. He saw confirmation. She responded to stress with output. Fear increased focus. Emotion sharpened ability. That's why he pushed her instead of ending her. Testing came before conflict. He watched how far her mind could stretch, how long it could stay connected, how much it could carry without breaking. 11 didn't collapse. She adapted. That's the difference Vecna was looking for. Most children fracture under pressure. A few reorganize. 11 was one of those few. That's why Vecna tried to align with her. Not to save her, to use her. She wasn't meant to escape the system. She was meant to complete it. When she resisted, Vecna didn't stop. He adjusted. Her existence proved the method worked. And if it worked once, it could work again. That's why Vecna keeps targeting children. He's not chasing revenge. He's repeating a process. The victims are chosen, not random. Vecna doesn't search for targets. He filters them. Every child he approaches already fits a profile. They feel isolated. They carry unresolved guilt. They replay specific moments. These traits matter. Vecna isn't interested in loud fear. He wants persistent thought. A mind that loops is easier to enter. A mind seeking answers stays engaged. That's why his victims often appear distracted before disappearing. They withdraw. They lose focus. The connection starts early. Vecna observes from a distance. He waits for the pattern to stabilize. Once the loop is strong enough, he acts. This explains why his attacks follow rhythm, not location, not opportunity. Timing matters more than proximity. When a child reaches emotional overload, resistance drops. The mind stops evaluating. It reacts. That's the opening. Vecna doesn't need physical access. He needs attention. Once attention locks, separation begins. The child is no longer fully present. Reality competes with memory. That split allows Vecna to take control. Nothing about this is chance. Every victim is chosen long before the attack happens. Why Vecna needs them young. Vecna isn't focused on the present. He's focused on what lasts. Age matters. A child's mind is still forming patterns. Beliefs haven't locked in. Responses aren't fixed. That makes influence permanent. Adults can be disrupted. They recover. They reframe. Children adapt instead of resisting. When influence starts early, it becomes normal. It doesn't feel imposed. It feels internal. That's what Vecna wants. He doesn't need obedience. He needs alignment. The younger the target, the longer the effect remains. Memories blend with identity. Fear becomes expectation. This is why Vecna doesn't rush. He's not collecting numbers. He's investing time. Each child represents extended reach, extended control. That control doesn't end with them. It spreads through behavior, through decisions, through future choices. Vecna understands growth. Power isn't static, it compounds. And children give him time. Time to shape, time to reinforce, time to extend his presence beyond direct contact. That's why he needs them young, not for strength, for continuity. Vecna's goal is not death. If death were the goal, Vecna would move faster. He doesn't. He waits, he connects, he sustains the link. That delay matters. Death ends influence. Vecna needs influence to continue. Each victim strengthens the connection between worlds. Not through force, through repetition. Fear keeps the mind active. Active minds generate energy. Vecna converts that into reach. This is why his victims don't vanish immediately. The process has stages. First comes isolation, then fixation, then separation. The physical outcome is last. By then, the purpose is already served. Vecna isn't removing people. He's weakening structure. Each connection thins the boundary between spaces. Each loss destabilizes reality. This isn't random destruction. It's incremental. Small breaks create larger ones. Vecna doesn't need mass casualties. He needs consistent pressure. And pressure accumulates. That's why he targets carefully. That's why he repeats the method. The damage compounds even after the victim is gone. This is why stopping him isn't simple. The effect doesn't end with survival. The impact remains. The upside down reflects Vecna's mind. The upside down isn't random. It isn't just another place. It's a system. Time there doesn't move forward. It stays fixed. That matters. Trauma works the same way. It traps attention in a single moment. Vecna understands that. The environment mirrors how his mind operates. Events don't resolve. They repeat. Spaces stay abandoned. Objects stay where they were left. Nothing progresses. This reflects how Vecna connects to his victims. He holds them inside unresolved memories. He keeps them focused on one moment. The upside down functions the same way. It doesn't adapt. It preserves. This is why Vecna feels in control there. That space responds to focus and repetition, not movement. Children especially get caught in that loop. Their minds don't move past trauma easily. Vecna doesn't need to change the environment. He needs to maintain it. As long as nothing resolves, his influence stays active. The upside down isn't just his base, it's a model. Vecna is replacing the world. Vecna isn't trying to win a battle. He's planning what comes after. Adults maintain systems. They keep things running. Children replace them. Vecna understands that. If influence starts early, it doesn't need force later. It carries forward on its own. Every child he connects with becomes a point of extension, not an agent, a channel. That influence spreads through decisions, through behavior, through growth. This is why Vecna doesn't rush global collapse. He allows time to pass. The more time he has, the less resistance remains. He isn't destroying the world outright. He's redirecting it. Change happens quietly at first, then it becomes normal. By the time it's noticed, it's already integrated. That's why children matter. They don't remember a world before influence. They grow up inside it. Vecna isn't erasing the present. He's shaping the future. Vecna doesn't see children as victims. He sees timing. He understands that control doesn't begin with force. It begins before choice feels like choice. That's why he watches. That's why he waits. That's why he starts young. Every child he takes follows the same logic. Access first, influence second, outcome last. This was never about fear or chaos or revenge. It's about continuity. Adults fight change. Children grow inside it. Vecna isn't trying to erase the world overnight. He's letting it move forward under direction. That's why stopping him is difficult. Even survival doesn't undo the damage, because what Vecna leaves behind isn't destruction, it's alignment. And once alignment becomes normal, it no longer feels controlled. That's the danger. Vecna isn't the end of the world, he's what comes next. Make sure to like, comment your theories, subscribe, and hit the bell.